I, 45, male, have been married to my wife, 35, female, for about 6 years, and honestly, I have never been happier. I was a little skeptical regarding our relationship in the beginning when I found out that she had a kid from her previous marriage, but as soon as I saw the kid, I was gone. I had never really wanted my own kids until I met my stepson. He was the sweetest little kid, and I knew then and there that I was going to marry his mother one day. I had told my wife that I didn't want to have children, but I would love her child like my own, and I tried to fulfill that promise every day. She didn't want more kids, so it worked out perfectly. Before we got married, my wife had told me all about her ex-husband and his shenanigans, but he hadn't bothered us at all, so I didn't think he would be a problem in our lives. Of course, I knew that we would have to share the kid with him, but that was the only thing that I had comprehended. I didn't think he would have any space in our lives other than that. So it was kind of a bummer when he kept putting his nose in our business. The kid was 11 when we first started living together, but we had known each other before that. After I got married to his mother, he asked me if he could call me Dad since he always called his biological father Papa. I was overjoyed that he was comfortable enough that he wanted to call me Dad, so of course I said yes. We were a nice little happy family for a while until my wife's ex-husband started butting in. I think he was insecure because my stepson was happier at home with me and his mom than he was with his papa. He even said it a few times. Kids don't have any filters, they tell it like it is. Of course, he liked living with us better. We were a family, we had family traditions, and he had his favorite toys at our place. His papa was a single man, and he was sometimes so busy with work that he didn't give his son any time. It was natural that he wanted to stay with us. But neither I nor my wife even insinuated that he would keep away from his papa. But the fact that his kid was much happier with me put a dent in his fragile little ego. He stated that he was acting like an a-hole all of a sudden. He would pick fights with me for no reason. I would usually not engage with him, but as time went on, he started getting aggressive. He snapped at the kid a few times, and then I decided that I wasn't going to sit and take his tantrums. I told him to back off and let us live our lives like we wanted to. He threatened custody a few times, and my wife would get really scared, so I tried my best to keep my calm. I didn't want to be the reason my wife lost her kid, and I didn't want to lose him either. I adored that kid like my own, and it wasn't his fault that his papa was a grade A a-hole. We tried to keep peace for the sake of the kid, but as the years went on, the animosity grew. We stopped talking to each other. We would just drop the kid off at his house, and he would do the same. What could have been a really nice co-parenting relationship was effectively ruined by that man because he couldn't fathom that his son had another father figure in his life. One other thing that happened was that he stopped paying for anything kid-related. He didn't pay for his school, clothes, or toys. I mean, I was happy to provide for him, and I did provide for him, but as a father, he had some duties that he neglected. He got so used to me and my wife paying for everything that he stopped doing it altogether. My wife did talk to him about that, but he just brushed it off, saying that he would pay for things that mattered. I don't know what those things were, but we let it go for now. I really didn't want to have a conversation with him, which always turned into arguments. I was sick of his presence in my life as it was, so I really couldn't care less that he wasn't paying for his own kid. I had enough money to take care of my family. It was honestly a little sad to see how eager he was to involve himself in our lives. I understood it for what it was. He was insecure that his wife had found someone who loved her and was happy with her new life, while he was still single and bitter. He had been a horrible husband to her, but I still tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Being a bad husband doesn't mean he was a bad father too, so I really didn't have a problem with him spending time with the kid alone. Sometimes He would say inappropriate things in front of the kid, and he would have to tell him to watch them. But other than that, it was fine. He didn't spend that much time with his son, even when he had him. Even after all the animosity between us, we made it work. We co-parented as best as we could because that was best for my stepson. As the kid grew older, he started to spend less time with his papa, and we couldn't say anything. Teenagers don't listen to their parents, so it was his choice where he wanted to spend his time. His papa didn't see it that way. He accused me and my wife of keeping the kid away from him on purpose. We literally had nothing to do with it. He was growing up and we just couldn't make his choices for him anymore. It was his decision where he wanted to stay, and he chose the majority of the time our home. He still went to his papa's place, but the visits were far and few. I told him to spend some time with his father, but he was adamant on staying with us. He told me that his father was rarely home anyway, so he had to sit alone and watch TV. He even told me that his father doesn't care about him, but didn't elaborate any further. I felt like he was hiding something, but he was clearly not ready to talk about it, so I didn't want to force him. My wife and I agreed that we would let him make his own decisions about whether he wanted to see his father or not. Of course, my wife's ex was being a baby about it because he couldn't fathom that we were letting the kid make his own decisions. You have to give teenagers a choice in their lives. I trusted him to make the decision that was best for him. In the following years, he drifted apart from his father a lot, but there were still visits. He probably felt bad about not going to his father's place, so he still made an appearance every 2 months. His father stopped nagging us after a while. He didn't really care about the kid anyway. He just wanted the same amount of time with him because he was in some sick contest with me and my wife. When my stepson started high school, there was a lot of talk about college. His school wanted to prepare him for college, so we talked about where he wanted to go and what he wanted to study. He didn't want his father to feel left out, so he went over to his place to talk about college with him as well. When he came back, he was a little quieter than usual, but he assured me that he was fine when I asked. About a week or 2 after that visit, I got a call from his father. I usually ignore his calls, but since my stepson was with him that day, I picked up in case it was about the kid. He didn't greet me or anything. He went straight to the point, and that point was my stepson's college tuition. He told me that my stepson had been talking about college for a couple of weeks, like I didn't already know that. I asked him what he wanted, and he told me that he wouldn't be paying the tuition and I should better start saving money for it. He just pissed me off so much. I told him that we would divide the tuition. He has to pay half of it, and the other half will be covered by me and my wife. He said that he wouldn't pay anything because I stole his son from him when I married his ex-wife. So now it was my responsibility to pay for his college. The excuses he was making were laughable, so that's what I did. He didn't like that, so he got down to the threatening, like always. He said that he would get custody and steal his son right back if I caused any problems. He was getting on my nerves. I knew he was a joke of a human, but treating his son like some kind of bait to get back at me and my wife was a new low, even for him. I told him that it was equally his responsibility to make sure his son got a good college education. Threatening custody isn't going to cut it this time because I won't back off either. He either does the right thing or gets out of all our lives for good. That was the deal I was ready to make, but he was still yelling about the court and custody. After what felt like hours of trying to make sense of him, I finally gave up. I told him that if he wanted to play this ridiculous game, then I would see him in court, so he better lawyer up and start saving some money. I hung up on him and went back to my day. It wasn't until my stepson came back home that I realized that he was pissed at me. I tried to talk to him and urged him to tell me what was going on. He got pretty angry at me and told me that I didn't love him enough to pay for his college, and that's why I was fighting with his father about it. I felt so bad that it nearly knocked me off my feet. I tried to assure him that I loved him and was only trying to protect him, but teenagers don't listen to reason easily. He brushed me off and gave me the cold shoulder every time I tried to have a conversation with him. I felt like I let him down just because I wanted his father to do the right thing. I should have kept my ego in check and thought about my stepson more than anything else. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife's ex that I will fight him for the custody of my stepson if he doesn't pay for his college tuition? Update 1. I tried to talk to my stepson in the following days, but he was pretty adamant about ignoring me. I understood that he was upset, but I needed to assure him that I wasn't fighting with his father because I didn't love him. I do love him. He is my kid, no matter whose DNA he shares. I just wanted to do the right by him and also make sure that his father treats him the same way I and my wife do. He deserves all the love and affection from all the adults in his life. He took my fight with his father in a different way than I intended, and I wasn't happy with the way things were going. I didn't want him to close in on himself. He and I had the easy relationship where he told me pretty much everything, and I was happy to listen. But now he was being secretive. I get that he was a teenager and needed more privacy than before, but I didn't know how to handle his indifference. He wasn't talking much to his mom either. She was worried about him too. I kept trying to get him to talk and to let us know what was going on in his mind, but he was being cagey about it. I didn't want to push him either because I didn't want to make him worry. He was making small talk with me and his mom here and there, but he wasn't talking about the stuff that was clearly bothering him. He hadn't mentioned the college fund or his father since that day when he got angry and yelled at me. I wanted him to open up and tell me how he was feeling. I wanted to take my next step, keeping his feelings in mind. I would put aside all my differences for the kid. I would pay for his college entirely on my own if it made him happy. I just wanted his father to take responsibility. Otherwise, I would never have asked him to pay half of it. I'm more than capable of taking care of my family. Update 2. My wife received court papers from his lawyer regarding the custody of my stepson. I really did think that he was bluffing. He had been bluffing about custody since I got married. I always took the high road and asked him not to bring custody into the middle of anything. My wife was pretty scared at the beginning because she thought her ex would take the kid away, so I was always cordial towards him and tried to appease him as much as I could. He always threatened to get custody whenever he was upset with me or my wife about something, but he never acted on that threat. So when he told me that he would contest custody if I didn't pay for my stepson's college tuition, I just assumed he was bluffing like always. But the court papers proved me wrong. He was delusional if he thought for 1 second that I would let him win this custody battle. I would bankrupt him before he could even touch my kid. He didn't have anything in his favor anyway. Me and my wife were great parents to my stepson, who was adequate at best. He never paid for anything the kid wanted since I came into their life. I had been taking care of him since I got married, so I really didn't have anything to worry about. My wife was pretty concerned, though. I told her not to worry and that I wouldn't let anything happen to her or our son. My stepson, who was already pretty pissed off with me, got angrier. He blamed me for pushing his father in the first place. He said that none of this would have happened if I hadn't fought with his father about his college tuition. I understood where he was coming from, but he was getting on my nerves. He wouldn't talk to me like a normal person. He just threw blame around, and all his evasiveness was making his mother really unhappy. I was all for giving him space, but I wouldn't hear about how everything in his life was my problem. I loved him, but he didn't get to act like a petulant child when he was 16 years old. I taught him to communicate and fix the problems, not create more by being difficult. I told him that he was not helping by placing the blame on me, and I assured him that I would talk to his father and get the case dropped. He got really angry and told me that I shouldn't get the case dropped. Instead, I should fight his father and get custody. He is behaving very erratically and is unable to express what he really wants. Update 3. I am concerned about my son. He didn't want to talk to us about the issue. He was being a teenager, all moody and angsty. I asked him in the following days what he meant by that, but he was being evasive as hell. I was utterly shocked at the revelation that he hated going to see his father. I knew he had some differences with his father, but I never knew the extent of it all. He never told me that he hated visiting him. His visits had been very few since he became a teenager, but I never thought he felt obligated to go there and hated it. After asking him constantly for a few days, he finally relented and told me what he meant by that. He told me that I should fight for him once. It made me quite sad that he would think that I wouldn't fight for him. I told him that I would do anything for him. He just needed to confide in me. He told me and his mother that he doesn't like going to his father's place and he goes because he knows his father will blame his mother if he doesn't. He said that he hated it there and his father was mostly out, but whenever he was there with him, he would always say mean things about me and his mother. I asked what he said, but he told me that he would rather not repeat all those things, which made me realize they might be pretty nasty. I didn't want him to remember them either, so I remained silent, wanting him to go on. He said other stuff too. He never felt welcomed in his father's place, and he doesn't particularly like spending time with him. He said that he went there for our sake only. All this time, I thought he was mad at me for fighting with his father, but in reality, he was mad at his father and wanted me to put an end to his visits and everything. I just felt defeated because I never wanted him to feel like he had to do something to make us feel better. He should have told me earlier, and I would have made sure he never had to set foot in his father's house again. I told him that he had nothing to worry about, and if he didn't want to go there, he didn't have to. His mood lit up at that, but I could see that he was still hiding something. I urged him to tell me the whole truth. He hesitated at first, but then he came clean, and what he told me made my blood boil to no end. I wanted to go see his father right then and there and smash his face for putting this sweet little kid in this horrible position. Update 4. So it's been a few days since I last posted. When I asked my stepson to tell me whatever was bothering him, he very reluctantly told me and my wife that his father had taken his pocket money from him when he went to his house. Me and my wife had decided to give a few bucks to him every week since he was 12 years old, and now I was finding out that his father took that money from him whenever he visited him. What kind of father does that to his own kid? It wasn't like it was such a huge amount of money. I guess he was just a garbage human being. I was enraged now. I wanted to make him pay, and I would stop at nothing. He would lose custody if I had anything to say about it, and my stepson would never see his face again. He had been visiting him against his will, and I will not stand for it at all. I promised my wife to take care of her and her son, and that's what I intend to do. I just thought he was an a-hole, but he was the worst kind of human being. He put his kid in the middle of his petty dispute with me. He forced his son to visit him even when he didn't want to, and to take the kid's money. I knew he didn't care about his son at all, but I never thought it was that bad. Even now, he was threatening custody to get back at me and my wife, not to get the kid because he loved him or something. Update 5. I got the best lawyers involved in the custody hearing, and they sent our papers to him. After a couple of days, his lawyers reached out to settle the matter outside of court. I knew that would happen because all he wanted was money anyway. I knew he would settle for money and drop the case. I had other plans, though. I told them that we wouldn't be settling outside of court and that we would see him at the hearing. His lawyer tried a few times to make us settle beforehand, but I wasn't having it. I knew exactly what he wanted, and I wasn't willing to appease him this time. He had no argument that would stand in court anyway. My wife and I were good parents compared to him, so we didn't have anything to worry about. When we remained adamant about going to court, he became desperate, but I still told him that we would go to court. After a few weeks of push and pull, he came to his senses and called to tell me that he didn't have enough money to take us to court. I told him I knew that, and that's why I was pretty set on going to court. He said that we could forget about the whole thing and go back to the way it was before. I told him that we wouldn't be going back anywhere. I told him straight up that I and my wife wanted custody and we wanted him out of our lives for good. The man didn't even hesitate. He said yes. He said that the kid was expensive anyway, so I should take him off his hands. I was beyond disgusted with his choice of words. He said his lawyers would get in touch with me and make everything happen. My lawyers put in a clause stating that he would pay for half of the college tuition. He refused, of course, so I told him that we could go to court instead. He backed himself into a corner pretty nicely. It wasn't like I didn't have enough money to pay for his college. It was a matter of principle. He made my stepson's life miserable, and he could even talk to us about it, so it was only fair that he paid some compensation for it. In the end, he agreed to the terms because that was the best he was going to get anyway. The best thing that came out of it was his absence from our lives and the pure joy on my stepson's face when he found out that he doesn't have to indulge his father from now on. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.